Today we're going to be looking at the game HumanitZ. HumanitZ is a top-down or overhead open-world survival game developed by Yodubs Studios and published by Freedom Games. HumanitZ is very similar to the game Project Zomboid, if you're familiar with that game. Although, there aren't as many game mechanics yet, as this is still an early access game. It still has much to offer, with decent enough graphics, so if you love a zombie survival game, you would definitely enjoy playing this. In this video, I want to go over some of the game mechanics, like base building, crafting, enemies, and other mechanics, as well as what makes this game appealing. The first thing I want to cover is base building. In any zombie survival game, this is probably the most important feature to focus on, aside from the zombie mechanics. Without a place to build up and defend, you won't make it very far. What's nice in HumanitZ is even though there isn't much in terms of building, what they offer is just enough for the time being. You can build wood or sheet metal structures, a couple different types of barricades, and a basic wooden house or starter shelter. Although, your best bet is to find an existing structure and add to it. One feature that I liked is that you are able to layer structures, so you can layer walls or fences to fill in smaller gaps. You are also able to rotate the things you build 360 degrees, which is nice if you want to put something in a particular way. Most of the materials you need are readily available. You're able to cut down trees into logs and smaller pieces of wood. You can also turn broken down cars into sheet metal and scrap metal if you have a sledgehammer. The hardest part when building is finding boxes of nails. Early in my playthrough when I was exploring, I found this hardware store that had everything I needed and looked easy enough to defend. It was also right next to a pond that I could fish in, so this was an ideal spot to start. While exploring the map, you'll come across locations in the game that make great bases. In my playthrough, I chose this base that had a large, shack-like structure and a shed. It also had a truck and was mostly surrounded by gates. It also came with this really awesome gate entrance. I've also found a few others that would be easy to defend. One with shipping containers that was completely enclosed, so that enemies would have to funnel through the entrance, making them a lot easier to kill. There was even this random pre-built base in the middle of nowhere that already had a cooking stove, rain catcher, storage container, and a chicken coop right next to it. When you settle on a location for your base, don't forget to also build a spawn point that keeps enemies from spawning in that location. Later on, when you have enough fuel and materials, you can light up your base with lampposts and generators that make it feel much more secure and homey. It also helps at night when you need to defend your base. Defending your base comes with its own challenges, but we'll get into that later in this video. Like most survival games, the key to surviving are keeping your health, hunger, and thirst levels normal. Pretty basic. Some other features shown in the game are temperature, and there's also cough medicine and cures for infection if you are bitten. But I'm not sure if these features play a role just yet. I've tried seeing what happens when my character is cold, but my character never got sick, and it didn't bring down my health. I've also been hit by zombies many times, but was never bitten. I think these are features that will come into play later. Or I was just very lucky. Scavenging is going to be your best bet for many resources until your base is well established. This is also how you'll find crucial items like better weapons, armor, clothing, and things you will need later in the game. Be careful when exploring dangerous locations like military checkpoints, as these places will have stronger zombie types, but better loot. In HumanitZ, you gain experience and level up through everything you do, from killing zombies to crafting, fishing, and cutting down trees. When you level up, you gain skill points, which can be used to deal more damage with certain weapons, see further with binoculars, use less resources when base building, and etc. Plan or save up your skill points accordingly, as they get harder and harder to get the more you level up. There are many different types of locations to explore throughout the map. You can choose to start in a more rural, suburb, or city setting. Each type of location comes with its own pros and cons, so you want to choose accordingly and be mindful when you are exploring. There are also different seasons and dynamic weather in HumanitZ. In my playthrough, I had started in autumn and made it into winter before I started making this video. I had changed the number of days per season to be 15, so this took what felt like forever. What I like is that aside from the seasons, it can also get foggy or cloudy. Some days are pretty dark, but also on some nights the moon shines and you can actually see around you. Some days are rainy, which is good when you have farming plots and rain catchers set up, but more on that later. In the wintertime, I've also experienced snowstorms that make it extra cold, and your character is still cold even if you're inside your base next to a fire. I've even tried making my own makeshift shelter with a fire inside, but it was still the same. During the winter season, there was also a rain or sleet storm with lightning, which I thought was pretty neat. I didn't make it into the spring or summer season yet, but I would expect there to be more lightning storms during those seasons. Once you've established your base and you've scavenged enough materials, making crafting benches is the obvious next step. These can come in handy as they make it easier to craft some materials or give you access to other materials that are harder to find. I didn't use these too much in my playthrough, mostly to make arrows, fuel, and other items used pretty often. But it is pretty helpful to be able to make stuff when you need it. There are various benches that you can add to your base that offer a variety of crafting options, from medical supplies to food, to guns, weapons, whatever your base and yourself might need. There is also a CB radio that you can add, which gives you the option to call in traders and trade for random goods. To survive in HumanitZ, you can't rely on always being able to loot food and drinks. For long term, you will want to hunt, fish, farm, and collect rainwater. Hunting can be done by looking for animals in the wild or by setting traps and leaving bait. In my playthrough, I left a few traps outside of my base, and while I was in the wild, if I saw an animal that I could hunt, I would try. Though it's not that easy, as the animals will run away from you pretty quickly, even when you're sneaking. The most effective way would be to have a hunting rifle or something that allows you to shoot from further away. Using a bow and arrow for hunting was not that effective. Be careful when out in the wild, as there are dangerous animals like wolves and bears that would gladly take a chunk out of you if you're not careful and given the chance. Fishing in the game is pretty simple. I'm also glad that there is only one type of bait that you can use for fishing or setting traps. You can fish with a fishing rod if you're able to find one, which was how I got most of my food during my playthrough. Or you can set fish traps in the water and check back on them later. Again, a little bit of both is recommended for long-term survival. Fishing takes a bit of time, and sometimes the fish can get away from you or you lose your bait. But overall, this was my preferred method for getting food. Farming is also an extra method for getting food that is worth doing, as it doesn't take much effort and can be done passively. The hardest part is finding seeds. When you have seeds planted, you don't have to consistently water them, which I thought was nice because they require a ton of water. One nice thing about weather in the game is that when it rains, it waters them for you. Fertilizer speeds up the growing process, but it is very hard to come by. Save your empty cans, because later when you have meats and vegetables, you can make soups. Growing potatoes is very helpful because it provides food and can also be used to make alcohol. Eating the vegetables will also give you more seeds of that type. There are a few different zombie types that I've encountered in the game. You have your basic walking zombies, a few runners, tougher, bigger zombies that require more hits, and there are military zombies that have armor on that make it harder to get a headshot, as you'll have to knock off the helmets first. There are hazmat zombies who have an oxygen tank on their back that can explode when hit. These are pretty fun to kill. There are also radiated zombies that you'll want to keep your distance from unless you have a gas mask, even when looting their corpse, and a giant one that explodes when it dies. They even added a Santa one for the holiday season. Nighttime spawns a zombified dog that is really fast and aggressive, so be careful when exploring at night. The amount of zombies changes depending on the area that you're in. Rural areas will tend to have less, and the towns and cities will tend to be packed. Certain areas like military checkpoints will also have a lot no matter where they are. One feature in this game that I loved and hated was the roaming zombies. If you stay in an area for a while, there will be a horde of zombies that will wander in your direction, even if you are crouched inside of a building. So if you planned on making a perfectly safe base to hide in, think again. Aside from zombies, there are also human enemies in HumanitZ, which by far was one of my favorite features they've included that set this game apart. Human enemies help add to the pressures of the game, as there aren't just zombies to worry about. And think twice if you stumble upon a base occupied by humans, as they outnumber you and usually have guns. They will even flank you if you are hiding. These enemies will have some good loot though, and the places they are defending are usually great spots to turn into a base for yourself, if you can wipe them out. Like the roaming zombies, there are also random attacks from humans as well, which are much more surprising than random roaming zombie attacks. With the roaming zombies, you can set up barbed wire walls or barricades, and the zombies will run into them until they eventually die. With proper placement, you can make a base that can take care of these without your intervention. But with the humans, they're smarter than that, and they will find ways into your base. I even saw one who was trying to pick my locked gate. These enemies keep you on your toes, as you'll be quietly waiting for night to pass, and then suddenly be rushed by gunfire from out of nowhere. Another little detail that I love that the creators added to this game was that the human enemies and zombies will attack each other. You'll want a vehicle as soon as possible to get yourself around the map. Finding the materials needed to fix up a car is challenging, but you can get lucky if you loot the right areas. Fuel is really hard to come by, so until you are able to consistently make your own, use it sparingly. Don't forget to look at the map and mark locations so that you don't get lost. Repair kits for the cars are also hard to come by, and are used to repair the condition of the vehicle when it gets damaged. If it gets damaged enough, it will stop running. I'm not sure what happens when it is damaged all the way, but I imagine it's nothing good. Items in the game all have a quality percentage as well. The materials used to repair the car, like the fuel pump, starter, and battery, all have these percentages as well. But what I found out the hard way was that using repair kits on your vehicle does not repair these parts. The percentages go down from usage, so be aware of where they are at. I had my truck stop running in the middle of a bunch of zombies because the starter motor was broken, even though the vehicle was in good condition. In HumanitZ, you're able to find a dog companion that will travel with you and help fight enemies, which I really enjoyed because it made the game feel much less lonely. I found mine in a police station, so if you happen upon one, check them out as there might be a friend in there. Like most zombie survival games, there isn't really much of a story or main purpose other than just to survive as long as possible. One goal you can have in HumanitZ is to reach and activate the radio tower. The game doesn't end when you do, but it is something to work towards while you're surviving and unlocks random airdrops. By no means is this an easy thing to do either. The radio tower is located far away from your starting location if you choose to start at the easiest spawn point. And when you're eventually able to reach the radio tower, you'll need to fight your way to the tower, and then have the materials to repair it. one of those being a hard to find radio receiver. I like that they added this to the game, as you'll have to explore many of the game's locations and mechanics to get to this point. As of this video, I've only tried playing multiplayer a few times, because there isn't many players yet, so I couldn't get a good enough experience to talk more about it. But I think this game would be fun to play with friends or a community. One thing that seems to be only in multiplayer is the option to sleep, which I haven't tried, but the option is in the server settings. I know I would have loved this option in single player mode. There also seems to be other game modes like survival scenarios coming in the future, but as of this video, these other modes haven't been unlocked yet. Overall, I really enjoyed this game. It's still in early access at the time of making this video, but there are enough features and it feels polished enough to have a really enjoyable experience. If the game continues to progress, I think it will be one of the top contenders for zombie survival games. My biggest suggestion for this game would be to make friendly humans and friendly human bases, where you can get random missions like killing certain zombies, human enemies, or wipe out a certain location on the map, or just to scavenge certain materials or gather food. These bases can also just be a place to be safe while you're building up your base elsewhere. Human companions that can travel with you or stay and work at your base would also be nice. That being said, HumanitZ is a game worth trying out if you love zombie games. You can get it from Steam or put it on your wish list as soon as possible. Hope you enjoyed this video. Good luck out there.